Book of Good Counsels, from the Sanskrit of the Hithopadesha, by Sir Edwin Arnold. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jyoti Taravanot. The Parting of Friends. Then spake the royal princess to Vishnu Sarman, "Reverend Sir, we have listened to the winning of friends. We would now hear how friends are parted." "Attend then," replied the sage, "to the parting of friends, the first couplet of which runs in this wise: The jackal set, of knavish cunning full, at loggerheads the lion and the bull." "How was that?" asked the sons of the Raja. Vishnu Sarman proceeded to relate the story of the lion, the jackals, and the bull. In the Deccan there is a city called Golden Town, and a wealthy merchant lived there named Well-to-do. He had abundant means, and as many of his relations were even yet richer, his mind was bent upon outdoing them by gaining more. Enough is never what we have. Looking down on the lives below them, men of little store or great, looking up to higher fortunes, hard to each man seems his fate. And is not wealth won by courage and enterprise? As a bride unwisely wedded shuns the cold caress of eld, so from coward souls and slothful Lakshmi's favours turn repelled. Ease, ill health, home-keeping, sleeping, woman service, and content, in the path that leads to greatness, these be 6 obstructions sent. And wealth that increases not diminishes, a little gain is so far good. Seeing how the Surna wasteth, seeing how the ant hill grows, little adding unto little, live, give, learn as lifetime goes. Drops of water falling, 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 brim the chatty o'er. Wisdom comes in little lessons, little gains make largest store. Moved by these reflections, Well-to-do loaded a cart with wares of all kinds, yoked 2 bulls to it, named Lusty Life and Roarer, and started for Kashmir to trade. He had not gone far upon his journey when, in passing through a great forest called Bramblewood, Lusty Life slipped down and broke his foreleg. At the sight of this disaster, Well-to-do fell a thinking, and repeated, "Men their cunning schemes may spin, God knows who shall lose or win." Comforting himself with such philosophy, Well-to-do left Lusty Life there, and went on his way. The Bull watched him depart, and stood mournfully on 3 legs, alone in the forest. "Well, well," he thought, "it is all destiny, whether I live or die. Shoot 100 shafts, the quarry lives and flies, not due to death. When his hour is come, a grass blade hath a point to stop his breath." As the days passed by, and Lusty Life picked about in the tender forest grass, he grew wonderfully well, and fat of carcass, and happy, and bellowed about the wood as though it was his own. Now the reigning monarch of the forest was King Tawny hide the Lion, who ruled over the whole country absolutely, by right of having deposed everybody else. Is not might right? Robes were none, nor oil of unction, when the king of beasts was crowned. It was his own fierce roar proclaimed him, rolling all his kingdom round. One morning his Majesty, being exceedingly thirsty, had repaired to the bank of the Yamuna to drink water, and just as he was about to lap it, the bellow of lusty life, awful as the thunder of the last day, reached the imperial ears. Upon catching the sound, the King retreated in trepidation to his own lair without drinking a drop, and stood there in silence and alarm, revolving what it could mean. In this position he was observed by the sons of his minister, two jackals named Karataka and Damanaka, who began to remark upon it. "Friend Karataka," said the last, "what makes our royal master slink away from the river when he was dying to drink?" "Why should we care?" replied Karataka. "It's bad enough to serve him and be neglected for our pains." "Oh, the bitter salt of service! Toil, frost, fire are not so keen. Half such heavy penance bearing, tender conscience were clean." "Nay, friend, never think thus," said the Manaka. "What but for their vassals, elephant and man, swing of golden tassels, wave of silken fan, but for regal manner that the Chatra brings, horse and foot and banner, what would come of kings?" "I care not," replied Karataka. "We have nothing to do with it, and matters that don't concern us are best left alone. You know the story of the monkey, don't you? The monkey drew the sower's wedge and died. Let meddlers mark it and be edified." "No," said the Manaka. "How was it?" "In this way," answered Karataka. The story of the monkey and the wedge. In South Bihar, close by the retreat of Dharma, there was an open plot of ground, upon which a temple was in course of erection, under the management of a man of Kayith caste named Subhadatta. A carpenter upon the works had plenty sawed through a long beam of wood, and wedged it open, and was gone away, leaving the wedge fixed. Shortly afterwards a large herd of monkeys came, frolicking that way, and one of their number, directed doubtless by the angel of death, got astride the beam and grasped the wedge, with his tail and lower parts dangling down between the pieces of the wood. Not content with this, in the mischief natural to monkeys, he began to tug at the wedge, till at last it yielded to a great effort and came out, when the wood closed upon him and jammed him all fast. So perished the monkey, miserably crushed. And I say again, let meddlers mark it and be edified. "But surely," argued the Manaka, "servants are bound to watch the movements of their masters." "Let the Prime Minister do it then," answered Karataka. "It is his business to overlook things, and subordinates shouldn't interfere in the department of their chief. You might get ass's thanks for it. The ass that he whored when the dog should do it, for his lord's welfare, like an ass did rue it." The Manaka asked how that happened, and Karataka related. The story of Washerman's Jackass. There was a certain washerman at Benares whose name was Karapurapataka, and he had an ass and a dog in his courtyard, the first tethered and the last roaming loose. Once on a time, when he had been spending his morning in the society of his wife, whom he had just married, and had fallen to sleep in her arms, a robber entered the house and began to carry off his goods. The ass observed the occupation of the thief, and was much concerned. "Good dog," said he, "this is thy matter. Why dost thou not bark aloud and rouse the master?" "Gossip Ass," replied the dog, "leave me alone to guard the premises. I can do it if I choose. But the truth is, this master of ours thinks himself so safe lately that he clean forgets me, and I don't find my allowance of food nearly regular enough. Masters will do so, and a little fright will put him in mind of his defenders again." "Thou scurvy cur!" exclaimed the Ass, "at the work time asking wages! Is it like a faithful herd?" "Thou extreme Ass!" replied the Dog, "when the work is done, grudging wages! Is that acting like a lord?" "Mean-spirited beast!" retorted the Ass, "who neglectest thy master's business. Well then, I at least will endeavour to arouse him. It is no less than religion. Serve the sun with sweat of body, starve thy maw to feed the flame. Stead thy lord with all thy service, to thy death go, quiet of blame." So saying, he put forth his very best braying. The washerman sprang up at the noise, and missing the thief, turned in a rage upon the Ass for disturbing him, and beat it with a cudgel to such an extent that the blows resolved the poor animal into the 5 elements of death. "So that," continued Karataka, "is why I say, let the Prime Minister look to him. The hunting for prey is our duty. Let us stick to it then. And this," he said with a meditative look, "need not trouble us to day, for we have a capital dish of the royal leavings." "What!" said Damanaka, rough with rage, "dost thou serve the King for the sake of thy belly? Why take any such trouble to preserve an existence like thine? Many prayers for him are uttered whereon many a life relies. It's but one poor fool the fewer when the gulping raven dies." For assisting friends and defeating enemies also, the service of kings is desirable. To enter upon it for a mere living makes the thing low indeed. There must be dogs and elephants, but servants need not be like hungry curs, while their masters are noble. What say thy books? Give thy dog the merest mouthful, and he crouches at thy feet, wags his tail, and fawns and grovels in his earnestness to eat. Bid the elephant be feeding, and the best of fodder bring. Gravely, after much entreaty, condescends that mighty king." "Well, well," said Karataka, "the books are nothing to us, who are not counsellors." "But we may come to be," replied the Manaka. "Men rise not by chance or nature, but by exertions. By their own deeds men go downward, by them men mount upward all, like the diggers of a well and like the builders of a wall. Advancement is slow, but that is in the nature of things. Rushes down the hill the crag, which upward it was so hard to roll. So to virtue slowly rises, so to vice quick sinks the soul." "Very good," observed Karataka. "But what is all this talk about?" "Why, don't you see our royal master there, and how he came home without drinking? I know he has been horribly frightened," said the Manaka. "How do you know it?" asked the other. "By my perception, at a glance," replied Damanaka, "and I mean to make out of this occasion that which shall put his Majesty at my disposal." "Now," exclaimed Karataka, "it is thou who art ignorant about service. Who speaks unasked, or comes unbid, or counts on favour, will be chid." "I ignorant about service?" said Damanaka. "No, no, my friend, I know the secret of it. Wise, modest, constant, ever close at hand, not weighing but obeying all command, such servant abound." "A dependent," replied Damanaka, "should nevertheless present himself. He must make himself known to the great man at any risk. Pitiful, who fearing failure, therefore no beginning makes. Why forswear a daily dinner for the chance of stomach aches? And besides, to be near is at last to be needful. Is it not said, 'Nearest to the king is dearest, be thy merit low or high; Women, creeping plants, and princes twine round that which groweth nigh.'" "Well," inquired Karataka, "what wilt thou say being come to him?" "First," replied Damanaka, "I will discover if his Majesty is well affected to me." "How do you compass that?" asked the other. "Oh, easily! By a look, a word," answered Damanaka, "and that ascertained, I will proceed to speak what will put him at my disposal." "I can't see how you can venture to speak," objected the other, "without an opportunity. If Vrihaspati the grave spoke a sentence out of season, even Vrihaspati would have strong rebuke for such unreason." "Pray don't imagine I shall speak unseasonably," interrupted Damanaka. "If that is all your fear, I will start at once." "Go then," said Karataka, "and may you be as lucky as you hope." Thereupon Damanaka set out for the lair of King Tawny hide, putting on as he approached it the look of one greedily disconcerted. The Rajah observed him coming, and gave permission that he should draw near, of which Damanaka, availing himself, made reverential prostration of the 8 members, and sat down upon his haunches. "You have come at last, then, Sir Jackal," growled his Majesty. "Great Monarch," humbly replied Damanaka, "my service is not worthy of laying at your imperial feet, but a servant should attend when he can perform a service, and therefore I am come. When kings' ears itch, they use a straw to scratch 'em; when kings' foes plot, they get wise men to match 'em." Growled the Lion. "Your Majesty suspects my intellect, I fear," continued the Jackal, "after so long an absence from your Majesty's feet; but if I may say so, it is still sound." Growled the Lion again. "A king may, it please your Majesty, should know how to estimate his servants, whatever their position. Pearls are dull in leaden settings, but the setter is to blame. Glass will glitter like the ruby, dulled with dust. Are they the same? And a fool may tread on jewels, setting in his crown mere glass, yet at selling gems are gems, and fardels but for fardels pass. Servants, gracious liege, are good or bad as they are entertained. Is it not written, horse and weapon, lute and volume, man and woman, gift of speech, have their uselessness, or uses in the one who owneth each. And if I have been traduced to your Majesty as a dull fellow, that hath not made me so. Not disparagement nor slander kills the spirit of the brave. Fling a torch down, upward ever burns the brilliant flame it gave. Accept then, sire, from the humblest of your slaves, his very humble counsel. For wisdom from the mouth of children, be it overpassed of none. What man scorns to walk by lamplight in the absence of the sun? Good, Damanaka, said King Tawny-hide, somewhat appeased. How is it that thou, so wise a son of our first minister, hast been absent all this while from our court? But now speak thy mind fearlessly. What wouldst thou? Will your Majesty design to answer one question, said Damanaka. Wherefore came he back from the river without drinking? Hush, whispered the King, thou hast hit right upon my trouble. I knew no one unto whom I might confide it, but thou seemest a faithful fellow, and I will tell thee. Listen, then, continued his Majesty in an agitated whisper. There is some awful beast that was never seen before in this wood here, and we shall have to leave it. Look you, did you hear by chance the inconceivable great roar he gave? What a strong beast it must be to have such a voice! May it please your Majesty, I did hear the noise, said the Jackal, and there is doubtless cause for terrible apprehension therein. But take comfort, my liege, he is no minister who bids thee prepare for either war or resignation. All will go well, and your Majesty will learn by this difficulty which be your best servants. Good, Jackal, said Tawny-hide, I am horribly frightened about it. I can see that, thought Damanaka, but he only said, Fear nothing, my liege, while thy servant survives. What shall I do? Asked the King. It is well to encourage those who can avert disaster. If your Majesty condescended now to bestow some favour on Karataka and the other, it shall be done, said the Raja. And summoning the other jackals, he gave them and Damanaka a magnificent gift of flesh, and they left the presence, undertaking to meet the threatened danger. But brother, began Karataka, haven't we eaten the king's dinner without knowing what the danger is which we are to meet, and whether we can obviate it? Hold thy peace, said Damanaka, laughing. I know very well what the danger is. It was a bull that bellowed. A bull, my brother, whose beef you and I could pick, much more the king, our master. And why not tell him so? asked Karataka. What? And quiet his majesty's fears? And where would our splendid dinner have been then? No, no, my friend. Set not your lord at ease, for doing that might starve you as it starved Curd Ear the cat. Who was Curd Ear the cat? inquired Karataka. Damanaka related the story of the cat who served the lion. Far away in the north, on a mountain named 1,000 Crags, there lived a lion called Mighty Heart, and he was much annoyed by a certain mouse who made a custom of nibbling his mane while he lay asleep in his den. The Lion would wake in a great rage at finding the ends of his magnificent mane made ragged, but the little mouse ran into his hole and he could never catch it. After much consideration, he went down to a village and got a cat named Curd Ear to come to his cave with much persuasion. He kept the cat royally on all kinds of dainties, and slept comfortably without having his mane nibbed, as the mouse would now never venture out. Whenever the Lion heard the mouse scratching about, that was always a signal for regaling the cat in a most distinguished style. But one day, the wretched mouse being nearly starved, he took courage to creep timidly from his hole, and was directly pounced upon by the Curd Ear and killed. After that the Lion heard no more of the mouse, and quite left off his regular entertainments of the cat. "No," concluded the Manaka, "we will keep our mouse alive for his Majesty." So conversing, the Jackals went away to find Lusty Life the Bull, and upon discovering him, Karataka squatted down with great dignity at the foot of a tree, while the Manaka approached to accost him. "Bull," said the Manaka, "I am the warder of this forest under the King Tawny hide, and Karataka the Jackal there is his general. The general bids thee come before him, or else instantly depart from the wood. It were better for thee to obey, for his anger is terrible." Thereupon Lusty Life, knowing nothing of the country customs, advanced at once to Karataka, made the respectful prostration of the 8 members, and said timidly, "My Lord General, what dost thou bid me do? Strength serves reason, saith the Mahout when he beats the brazen drum. Ho, ye elephants, to this work must your mightiness come." "Bull," answered Karataka, "thou canst remain in the wood no longer, unless thou goest directly to lay thyself at our royal master's imperial feet." "My lord," replied the Bull, "give me a guarantee of safety, and I will go." "Bull," said Karataka, "thou art foolish. Fear nothing. When the king of Chidi cursed him, Krishna scorned to make reply. Lions roar the thunder quiet, jackals yells they let go by. Our lord the king will not vouchsafe his anger to thee. Knowest thou not? Mighty natures war with mighty when the raging tempests blow. O'er the green rice harmless pass they, but they lay the palm trees low." So the Jackals, keeping Lusty Life in the rear, went towards the palace of King Tawny hide, where the Raja received them with much graciousness, and bade them sit down. "Have you seen him?" asked the King. "We have seen him, your Majesty," answered the Manaka. "It is quite as your Majesty expected. The creature has enormous strength, and wishes to see your Majesty. Will you be seated, sire, and prepare yourself? It will never do to appear alarmed at a noise." "Oh, if it is only a noise," began the Raja. But the cause, sire, that was what had to be found out, like the secret of Swing Ear the spirit." "And who might Swing Ear be?" asked the King. The story of the terrible bell. "Goblin, your Majesty," responded the Manaka. "It seemed so, at least to the good people of Brahmapura. A thief had stolen a bell from the city, and was making off with that plunder and more into the Sri Parvata hills when he was killed by a tiger. The bell lay in the jungle till some monkeys picked it up and amused themselves by constantly ringing it. The townspeople found the bones of the man and heard the noise of the bell all about the hills. So they gave out that there was a terrible devil there whose ears rang like bells as he swung them about, and whose delight was to devour men. Everyone accordingly was leaving the town, when a peasant woman named Karala, who liked belief the better for a little proof, came to the Raja. "Highness," she observed, "for a consideration I could settle this swing ear." "You could?" exclaimed the Raja. "I think so," repeated the woman. "Give her a consideration forthwith," said the Raja. Karala, who had her own ideas upon the matter, took the present and set out. Being come to the hills, she made a circle, and did homage to Ganapati, without whom nothing prospers. Then, taking some fruit she had brought, such as monkeys love extremely, she scattered it up and down in the wood, and withdrew to watch. Very soon the monkeys, finding the fruit, put down the bell to do justice to it, and the woman, picking it up, bore it back to the town, where she became an object of uncommon veneration. "We indeed," concluded the Manaka, "bring you a bull instead of a bell. Your Majesty shall now see him." Thereupon Lusty Life was introduced, and the interview passing off well, he remained many days in the forest on excellent terms with the Lion. One day another lion, named Stiff Ears, the brother of King Tawny-hide, came to visit him. The King received him with all imaginable respect, bade him be seated, and rose from his throne to go and kill some beasts for his refreshment. "May it please your Majesty," interposed the Bull, "a deer was slain today. Where is its flesh?" "The Maka and his brother know best," said the King. "Let us ascertain if there be any," suggested the Bull. "It is useless," said the King, laughing, "they leave none." "What!" exclaimed the Bull, "have those jackals eaten a whole deer?" "Eaten it, spoiled it, and given it away," answered Tawny-hide. "They always do so." "And this without your Majesty's sanction?" asked the Bull. "Oh, certainly not with my sanction," said the King. "Then," exclaimed the Bull, "it is too bad, and in ministers too. Narrow necked to let out little, big of belly to keep much, as a flagon is. The Vizier of a Sultan should be such. No wealth will stand such waste, your Majesty. He who thinks a minute little, like a fool, misuses more. He who counts a cowrie, nothing being wealthy, will be poor. A king's treasury, my liege, is the king's life." "Good brother," observed Stiff Ears, who had heard what the Bull said, "these jackals are your ministers of home and foreign affairs. They should not have direction of the treasury. They are old servants too, and you know the saying, Brahman soldiers these and kinsmen, of the three set none in charge. For the Brahmin, though you rack him, yields no treasure, small or large. And the soldier, being trusted, writes his quietness with his sword, and the kinsman cheats his kindred by the charter of the word. But a servant old in service, worse than any one is thought, who by long tried license fearless, knows his master's anger not. Ministers, my royal brother, are often like obstinate swellings that want squeezing, and yours must be kept in order. They are not particularly obedient, I confess," said Tawny Hide. "It is very wrong," replied Stiff Ears, "and if you will be advised by me, as we have banqueted enough to day, you will appoint this grain eating and sagacious bull your superintendent of stories." "It shall be so," exclaimed the King. Lusty Life was accordingly appointed to serve out the provisions, and for many days Tawny Hide showed him favour beyond all others in the court. Now the Jackal soon found that food was no longer so freely provided by this arrangement as before, and they met to consult about it. "It is all our own fault," said the Manaka, "and people must suffer for their own mistakes. You know who said, 'I that could not leave alone Streak o' gold must therefore mourn. She that took the housewife's place Lost the nose from off her face. Take this lesson to thy heart, Fools for folly suffer smart.'" "No," said Karataka, "how was it?" The Manaka related the story of the Prince and the Procuress who suffered for their own faults. In the city of Golden Streets there reigned a valorous king named Vira Vikrama, whose officer of justice was one day taking away to punishment a certain barber when he was stopped by a strolling mendicant who held him by the skirts and cried out, "Punish not this man, punish them that do wrong of their own knowledge." Being asked his meaning, he recited the foregoing verses, and being still further questioned, he told this story. "I am Prince Kandarpaketu, son of the King of Ceylon. Walking one day in my summer garden, I heard a merchant captain narrating how that out at sea, deep under water, on the 14th day of the moon, he had seen what was like nothing but the famous tree of paradise, and sitting under it a lady of most lustrous beauty, bedecked with strings of pearls like Lakshmi herself, reclining with a lute in her hands on what appeared to be a golden couch crusted all over with precious stones. At once I engaged the captain of his ship, and steered to the spot of which he told me. On reaching it, I beheld the beautiful apparition as he had described it, and transported with the exquisite beauty of the lady, I leapt after her into the sea. In a moment I found myself in a city of gold, and in an apartment of a golden palace, surrounded by young and beautiful girls. I found the Sea Queen. She perceived my approach, and sent an attendant with a courteous message to meet me. In reply to my questions, I learned that the lady was the Princess Ratnamanjari, daughter of the King of all the spirits, and how she had made a vow that whoever should first come to see her golden city with his own eyes should marry her. So I married her by the form called Gandharva, or union by mutual consent, and spent many and happy days in her delightful society. One day she took me aside and said, "Dear Prince, all these delights, and I myself, are thine to enjoy. Only that picture yonder of the fairy streak of gold, that thou must never touch." For a long time I observed this injunction. At last, impelled by restless curiosity, I laid my hand on the picture of streak of gold. In one instant her little foot, lovely as the lotus blossom, advanced from out of the painting, and launched me through sea and air into my own country. Since that, I have been a miserable wanderer, and passing through the city, I chanced to lodge at a cowkeeper's hut, and saw the truth of this barber's affair. The herdsman returned at night with his cattle, and found his wife talking to the wife of the barber, who is no better than a bawd. Enraged at this, the man bet his wife, tied her to a milking post, and fell asleep. In the dead of the night the barber's wife came back and said to the woman, "He whom thou knowest is burnt with the cruel fire of thine absence, and lies nigh to death. Go therefore and console him, and I will tie myself to the post until thou returnest." This was done, and the cowkeeper presently awoke. "Ah, thou light thing," he said jeeringly, "why dost not thou keep promise and meet thy gallant?" The barber's wife could make no reply, whereat, becoming incensed, the man cried out, "What, dost thou scorn to speak to me? I will cut thy nose off." And so he did, and then lay down to sleep again. Very soon the cowkeeper's wife came back and asked if all was well. "Look at my face," said the barber's wife, "and you will see if all is well." The woman could do nothing but take her place again, while the barber's wife, picking up the severed nose, and at a sad loss how to account for it, went to her house. In the morning, before it was light, the barber called to her to bring his box of razors, and she bringing one only, he flung it away in a passion. "Oh, the knave!" she cried out aloud directly. "Neighbours, neighbours, he has cut my nose off." And so she took him before the officers. The cowkeeper, meantime, wondering at his wife's patience, made some inquiry about her nose, whereto she replied, "Cruel wretch, thou canst not harm a virtuous woman. If Yama and 7 guardians of the world know me chaste, then be my face unmaimed." The herdsman hastened to fetch a light, and finding her features unaltered, he flung himself at her feet and begged forgiveness. For never tires the fire of burning, never wearies death of slaying, nor the sea of drinking rivers, nor the bright-eyed of betraying. Thereupon the king's officer dismissed Kandrapaketu and did justice by setting the barber free, shaving the head of the barber's wife, and punishing the cowkeepers. "That is my story," concluded Damanaka, "and thence I said that we had no reason to complain." "Well, but we must do something," said Karataka. "Yes, how shall we break the friendship of the king with the bull?" asked the other. "It is very strong," observed Karataka. "But we can do it," replied the other. "What force would fail to win, fraud can attain. The crow dispatched the serpent by a chain." "How did that occur?" asked Karataka. Damanaka related. The story of the black snake and the golden chain. A pair of crows had their abode in a certain tree, the hollow of which was occupied by a black snake, who had often devoured their young. The hen bird, finding herself breeding again, thus addressed her mate: "Husband, we must leave this tree. We shall never rear young ones while this black snake lives here. You know the saw, from false friends that breed thee strife, from a house with serpents rife, saucy slaves and brawling wife, get thee out to save thy life." "My dear," replied the Crow, "you need not fear. I have put up with him till I am tired. Now I will put an end to him." "How can you fight with a great black snake like that?" said the Hen bird. "Doubt nothing," answered the other. "He that hath sense hath strength. The fool is weak. The lion proud died by the hare so meek." "How came that about?" asked the Hen Crow. "Thus," replied her mate. The Story of the Lion and the Old Hare. On the Mandara mountain there lived a lion named Fierce of Heart, and he was perpetually making massacre of all the wild animals. The thing grew so bad that the beasts held a public meeting, and drew up a respectful remonstrance to the Lion in these words: "Wherefore should your Majesty thus make carnage of us all? If it may please you, we ourselves will daily furnish a beast for your Majesty's meal." The Lion responded, "If that arrangement is more agreeable to you, be it so." And from that time a beast was allotted to him daily, and daily devoured. One day it came to the turn of an old hare to supply the royal table, who reflected to himself as he walked along, "I can but die, and I will go to my death leisurely." Now Fierce of Heart the Lion was pinched with hunger, and seeing the hare so approaching, he roared out, "How darest you thus delay in coming?" "Sire," replied the hare, "I am not to blame. I was detained on the road by another lion, who exacted an oath from me to return when I should have informed your Majesty." "Go," exclaimed King Fierce of Heart in a rage, "show me instantly where this insolent villain of a lion lives." The hare led the way accordingly till he came to a deep well, whereat he stopped and said, "Let my lord the King come hither and behold him." The Lion approached, and beheld his own reflection in the water of the well, upon which, in his passion, he directly flung himself, and so perished. "I have heard your story," said the Hen Crow, "but what plan do you propose?" "My dear," replied her mate, "the Rajah's son comes here every day to bathe in the stream. When he takes off his golden anklet and lays it on the stone, do thou bring it in thy beak to the hollow of the tree, and drop it in there." Shortly after the Prince came, as was his wont, and taking off his dress and ornaments, the Hen Crow did as had been determined. And while the servants of the Prince were searching in the hollow, there they found the black snake, which they at once dispatched. "Said I not well," continued Damanaka, "that stratagem excels force?" "It was well said," replied Karataka. "Go, and may thy path be prosperous." With that, Damanaka repaired to the King, and having done homage, thus addressed him: "Your Majesty, there is a dreadful thing on my mind, and I am come to disclose it." "Speak," said the King, with much graciousness. "Your Majesty," said the Jackal, "this Bull has been detected of treason. To my face he has spoken contemptuously of the 3 prerogatives of the throne, unto which he aspires. At these words, King Tawny Hide stood aghast. "Your Majesty," continued the Manaka, "has placed him above us all in the court. Sire, he must be displaced. Teeth grown loose and wicked-hearted ministers, and poison trees, pluck them by the roots together. It's the thing that giveth ease." "Good Jackal," said the King, after some silence, "this is indeed dreadful, but my regard for the Bull is very great, and it is said, 'Long tried friends are friends to cleave to; never leave thou these in the lurch. What man shuns the fire as sinful, for that once it burned a church?' That is written of discarding old servants, may it please your Majesty," observed the Maka, "and this Bull is quite a stranger." "Wondrous strange," replied the Lion, "when I have advanced and protected him, that he should plot against me." "Your Majesty," said the Jackal, "knows what has been written, 'Raise an evil soul to honour, and his evil bends remain. Bind a cur's tail over so straitly, yet it curleth up again. Safe within the husk of silence, guard the seed of counsel, so that it break not. Being broken, then the seedling will not grow. What is to be done must be done with dispatch. After censuring his treason, would your Majesty still trust the traitor? Whoso unto ancient fondness takes again a faithless friend, like she mules that die conceiving, in his folly finds his end." "But wherein can the Bull injure me?" asked Tawny Hide. "Tell me that." "Sire," replied the Jackal, "how can I tell it? Ask who his friends are, ere you scorn your foe. The wagtail foiled the sea that did not sow." "How could that be?" demanded King Tawny Hide. The Jackal related the story of the wagtail and the sea. On the shore of the southern sea there dwelt a pair of wagtails. The hen bird was about to lay, and thus addressed her mate: "Husband, we must look about for a fit place to lay my eggs." "My dear," replied the cock bird, "will not this spot do?" "This spot!" exclaimed the hen, "why, the tide overflows it." "Good dame," said the cock, "am I so pitiful a fellow that the sea will venture to wash the eggs out of my nest?" "You are my very good lord," replied the hen with a laugh; "but still there is a great difference between you and the sea." Afterwards, however, at the desire of her mate, she consented to lay her eggs on the sea beach. Now the Ocean had overheard all this, and bent upon displaying its strength, it rose and washed away the nest and eggs. Overwhelmed with grief, the hen bird flew to her mate and cried, "Husband, the terrible disaster has occurred. My eggs are gone." "Be of good heart, my life," answered he. And therewith he called a meeting of fowls, and went with them into the presence of Gurud, the Lord of the Birds. When the master of the mighty wing had listened to their complaint, he conveyed it to the knowledge of the God Narayan, who keeps and kills and makes alive the world. The Almighty mandate given, Gurud bound it upon his forehead, and bore it to the ocean, which, so soon as it heard the will of Narayan, at once gave back the eggs. How indeed, concluded the Manaka, should I judge of the bull's power, not knowing who supports him? By what sign then, asked the king, may I conclude him a traitor? If he comes into the presence with his horns lowered for goring, as one that expects the fight, that, replied the Jackal, will convince your majesty. Thereupon the Manaka, the Jackal, withdrew and betook himself towards the Bull, upon perceiving whom he approached slowly, with all the air of one greatly distressed. "Good master Jackal," said Lusty Life, "what goes amiss with thee?" "All goes amiss with such as serve wicked masters," replied the Jackal. "But what ails thee?" asked the Bull. "Alas!" answered the Jackal, "what can I say in such a strait? Even as one who grasps a serpent, drowning it in the bitter sea, death to hold and death to loosen, such is life's perplexity." And therewithal the Jackal heaved a deep sigh and squatted down. "But, good friend," said the Bull, "at least tell me what is in thy mind." "Bull," began the Manaka, "it is a king's secret, and should not be spoken. But thou didst come here upon my safeguard, and as I hope for the life to come, I will tell thee of what touches thee so nearly. Listen. The heart of the king is turned against thee. He hath sworn secretly that he will kill thee and feast upon thy flesh." Then Lusty Life, the Bull, was sorely troubled, and he fell a musing thus: "Woman's love rewards the worthless, King of knaves exalters be, Wealth attends the selfish niggard, and the cloud rains on the sea." "Can this be the Jackal's doing?" he reflected. "Going with honest folk will not make one honest. Many a knave wins fair opinions, standing in fair company, as the sooty Surna pleases, lighted by a brilliant eye." Then he said aloud, "Wherein can I have angered the king? Do kings hate without cause? I can tell nothing, except that there is no happiness which abides long. Where the azure lotus blossoms, there the alligators hide. In the sandal tree are serpents, pain and pleasure live allied. I thought his majesty noble as the sandal tree, but that indeed is not wholly noble. Rich and sandal, yet no part is but a vile thing habits there. Snake and wasp haunt root and blossom, on the boughs sit ape and bear." "Bull," said the Manaka, "I knew the king of old for one whose tongue was honey and whose heart was poison." "But how very hard," said the Bull, "that he, being a lion, should attack me, an innocent eater of grass." "It is very hard," said the Jackal. "Who can have set him against me?" asked the Bull. "Being so, it cannot be bettered," replied the Jackal. "Whoever did it, as a bracelet of crystal once broken is not mended, so the favour of princes once altered is ended." "Yes," said the Bull, "and a king incensed is terrible. Wrath of kings and rage of lightning, both be very full of dread. But one falls on one man only, one strikes many victims dead. Still I can but die, but I will die fighting. When death is certain, and no hope left but in battle, that is the time for war." "It is so," said the Jackal. Having weighed all this, Lusty Life inquired of the Jackal by what signs he might conclude the King's hostile intentions. "If he glowers upon thee," answered Damanaka, "and awaits thee with ears pricked, tail stiffened, paw upraised, and muzzle agape, then thou mayest get thee to thy weapons like a bull of spirit. All men scorn the soulless coward who his manhood doth forget. On a lifeless heap of ashes fearlessly the foot is set." Then Damanaka the Jackal returned to the Lion and said to him, "If it please your Majesty, the traitor is now coming. Let your Majesty be on your guard, with ears pricked and paw upraised." The Bull meanwhile approached, and observing the hostile attitude of King Tawnyhide, he also lowered his horns and prepared for the combat. A terrible battle ensued, and at the last King Tawnyhide slew Lusty Life the Bull. Now when the Bull was dead, the Lion was very sorrowful, and as he sat in his throne lamenting, he said, "I repent me of this deed, as when an elephant's life blood is split, another hath the spoils. Mine is the guilt." "Sire," replied the Jackal, "a king over merciful is like a Brahman that eats all things equally. May all your Majesty's enemies perish as did this Bull." "Thus endeth," said the sage Vishnu Sarman, "the parting of friends." "We are gratified exceedingly thereby," replied the sons of the King. "Let me then close it thus," said the Preceptor: "So be friendship never parted, but among the evil hearted. Time's sure step drag, soon or later, to his judgment such a traitor. Lady Lakshmi of her grace grant good fortune to this place, and you, royal boys, and boys of times to be, in this fair fable garden wander free." End of The Parting of Friends. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat.